what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and it's going to be the Demonology, Dragonflight, Warlock, talent review slash discussion, desired returning abilities, however you want to word it, video. This is going to be part 2 of 3, maybe 4, depending on how the other videos go here, in a series talking about abilities, talents, old traits from Legion, things like that, which I personally wouldn't mind see returning in Dragonflight, talent-wise, for each Warlock spec. Now, Blizzard did indeed mention in their big Dragonflight unveil a few weeks ago that they are looking for some feedback from the community or for certain specs and talents and things that they wouldn't mind seeing back, that they like to see back for that spec. And the talent trees do seem pretty in-depth. You have your one generic class tree, and you have your one, specific spec tree. So there's a lot of abilities I think they have a decent chance of coming back. And Demonology is a weird spec because Demo gets an overhaul every 2 expansions, pretty much, and this version of Demonology has been around since Legion, but the older versions with meta and things don't necessarily fit what this current version of Demonology does. Now, I'm sure Blizzard could probably pull a rabbit out of the hat and make something work in some way, but there's not a whole lot of similarities between the two. But either way, I have a list of 9 to 10 abilities here, starting from what I guess I would least want to see to most want to see. Returning in Dragonflight talent-wise for Demonology Warlock. Now, if I miss any here, or you guys think you might have one that I don't know, will be a bit more relevant, drop it down in the comment section below. And if you have any questions, put them in as well, and I will be sure to get back to you. Now, at the same time, if you guys see any add-ons, weak auras, profiles, or really anything you'd like to grab from my UI, there's a link down below here to my Twitch where I stream 5 to 6 days a week. You can swing by anytime, grab them, hang out, ask any questions at the same time. Feel free to do so. And I want to give one huge shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys a million times for all support before we get too far in the video. If you guys are looking at supporting on Patreon, there should be a link somewhere up here as well as down in the video description below. Now, that being said, let's get into it. Starting off with a semi-familiar ability from Shadowlands. Alright, so at number 10, as far as returning abilities go for Demonology in Dragonflight, I guess hopeful returning abilities, is Carnivorous Stalkers. Now, hear me out on this one, because this is a bit of a maybe a hot take. It could be ranked higher, it could be ranked lower. Now, Carnivorous Stalkers, up until 9.1, essentially hasn't really had a whole lot of relevance. It didn't have relevance early on for Demonology, anywhere near as much in Shadowlands. But due to the changes from the Shadows, increasing all of your damage, like Tyrant damage, as well as other things as well, I believe it got a buff in 9.1, a minor one as well, maybe to its duration, on top of the Dreadlash buff and things like that. Carnivorous Stalkers gained a lot of value in Mythic Plus, in single target, in AoE, because it's the glue that holds that build together. Without Carnivorous Stalkers, yeah, the build's still fine, but your Dreadstalkers really only Dreadbite when you first cast them. They're not going to have a chance to rebite, or re-Dreadbite, or re-Chomp, whatever you want to call it, during their remaining lifespan of 12 seconds, right? They're just going to do it one time, and that's it. So that means there's, not as high of FTS uptime. There's no chance for them to re-Chomp, to reapply FTS, to re-Dreadbite, which higher FTS uptime means potentially more Tyrant coverage, means more implosion value, I guess longer implosion value, depending if you're imploding past the time the FTS falls. It's the glue that holds this build together. Now, we don't really know if Dreadlash and From the Shadows are going to still be a thing next expansion, because the talent trees are being reworked, so there is that, or if they're even able to be taken in the same combination. But if the Dreadlash FTS dog build is a thing, Carnivorous Stalkers needs to make it somewhere into the class, whether it's a baseline ability or a talent. It could maybe be one of those traits that you have ranks 1 through 5, where it's like your Dreadstalkers have a 2, 4, 6, 8, 10% chance to trigger additional Dreadbite. 10% seems like a lot because there's 2 dogs, but either way, the Dreadlash FTS Carnivorous Stalker synergy has probably been like my favorite, I guess, cycle of synergy for Demonology this expansion, and I would love to see that move forward in Dragonflight. But without Carnivorous, the build, at least to me, in my opinion, mostly dies off. So, number 9. This is one which is a throwback to... Throwback sounds scary. I'm not that old. A throwback to Legion. Demonwrath. Now, Demonwrath was an ability we had, like I said, in Legion, really only for the first... we had it for the whole expansion, but like it's one of those things where people don't really remember Demonwrath. Like, when you mention it, they're like, oh yeah, that was a thing. But it was removed heading into BFA, and it wasn't really like an ability that you spammed a crazy amount. It was castable on the move. It caused all of your demons to crackle with demonic energy. Basically they pulsed shadow damage to all enemies around them. It was like a unique kind of AoE you could sort of use It wasn't like as strong as like implosion cycling or other AoE based effects. I'm pretty sure that was a thing back then. I think implosion was a talent back then. Actually, this is probably a bigger source of your AoE. But regardless, it gave Demonology a spell that you could consistently cast on the move. Now, current Demonology does have Demonic Calling procs. It has Demon Bolt procs basically all the time with 2-piece, but even with 4-piece. But back in the olden days sounds scary, Demo was still mobile, but it wasn't, in my opinion, as mobile as it is today. But Demonwrath was castable while moving, and Demonwrath also had a 15% chance to generate a soul shard whenever you were casting it, whenever your demons are pulsing on surrounding mobs and things. Now, this is not crazy high on my list. It's number 9. It was a really cool ability that I just liked in general, having back in Legion. It was pretty cool. Thematically, I think it made some sense, and I think it would see some play when it comes to Demo and things. Maybe on the move would fill that gap a little bit. I like the ability. It's more of like a personal kind of favorite. I can't really justify it a crazy amount because I think Implosion being baseline does sort of fill that AoE gap a bit more. It might seem a little bit redundant, and to a similar extent, Demo is more mobile in its current form now. But at the same time, once again, going into Dragonflight, things could change depending on, if they keep half the talents or the toolkit or just certain things that happen with Demonology in general. I would like to see Demonwrath back. It's one of those cool abilities, at least to me, playing Demonology and Legion. I remember casting Demonwrath a handful of times. That boss, Tichondrius in Nighthold, comes to mind when we were LOSing. Spam Demonwrath, built some shards. It's a cool ability, and it's one of the long lost ones from OG Demo, which there's a few more in this video that's coming up that I would also like to see back. But Demonwrath starts us off there at number 9 for hopeful Legion returning based abilities for Demonology. So, number 8. Now, this one, I do feel that there are some traits, some abilities that need to be just sort of thrown in as like a, hey, this could be a good, like, rank-based talent. Sort of how, like, you had improved Corruption back in the day, maybe even improved Agony with, like, 5 different ranks that reduce the cast time or increase the damage. A really good choice for that, I think, is actually Infernal Furnace. This was a Demonology artifact weapon trait, Skull of the Minari, back in Legion as well. Increases damage dealt by your Wild Imp's Firebolt by 8%. And now, it's been a long time since Legion, but I vaguely remember trying to find conduits that would improve this. I think not conduits, good lord. Whatever they're called, the relics maybe, that would give you even more value out of this trait. Your imps were a very large source of your damage back in Legion. Almost like around the level of demonic consumption now in Shadowlands. And while this probably wouldn't be as strong, barring, decon going away in Dragonflight maybe, or just making a big shift in the damage profile of Demonology, it feels like a pretty good trait that people would be like, oh yeah, I remember playing with Infernal Furnace back in the day. Imp damage, I don't know, it feels good. It feels like a trait they could bring back, like a mid-tier row, where they need a bit of a point dump, but also want a bit of a capacitive throughput kind of increase. I think Infernal Furnace could very well be that trait. So, not much to say about it, just I like the trait. Alrighty, at number 7, this is one that might be a bit of a hot take as well. Some people love this legendary. Some people don't like it. I'm sort of in the middle. I don't really care either way. But, number 7. Grim Inquisitor's Dread Calling, the current Shadowlands legendary for Demonology. Each soul shard spent on Hand of Gul'dan increases the damage of your next called Dreastalkers by 4%, stacks to a certain amount, I think it's 30. Either way, it increases the power of your called Dreastalkers. Now, this is sort of one of the pieces to the big dog kind of FTS Dreadlash build you see played with Carnivorous Stalkers. It's not mandatory. It works well with the 2-piece tier set. It works well with this build, but Wilfred's works well too. They all work well. But it does feel like one of those traits that very well could just be a thing, like one of like the capstone kind of maybe like mid-tier off to the side gold traits or talents they could put in a certain row. Make it Grim Inquisitors, right? It is consistent damage in a sense because it's based off soul shards spent, which at times is influenced by, RNG, like Soul Conduit, like other kind of refund-based abilities. But once again, going in the Dragonflight, we don't really know if it's going to be there or not. But it is a consistent damage increase that you can sort of play at certain points in time, whether it's Mythic Plus or single target or AoE, building stacks of Grim Inquisitors for a more relevant point in time. And it feels like an ability you could have as a talent. It does. It feels like a really good, just mid-tier capstone kind of talent for Demonology. I would love to see it personally brought back as one of those in Dragonflight, and maybe given the option of like Grim Inquisitors versus maybe some kind of cooldown reduction, maybe at a certain point. I wouldn't even mind seeing Grim in a certain spot versus like Wilfred's in a certain spot, maybe offsetting one another here, because they sort of do share similar power levels depending on what you're doing, which once again could change in Dragonflight. But I think Grim is a really good candidate for a smaller like capstone kind of demonology talent. So all right, number 6. It's number 6, right? 10, 9, 8, 7. Yep, 6. I can count. Okay. Demonic Meteor. Now, this doesn't necessarily seem as impactful, or it might not, as Grim Inquisitor's Dread Calling, but Demonic Meteor, it's Demonic Meteor. I don't know, man. I was just a fan of Demonic Meteor a long time, for all the BFA. Whether you stacked it to like 1 trait, 2 trait or not, having the baseline chance to get a soul shard refunded per shard spent just felt good if you stacked it with Soul Conduit, other RNG based effects. And honestly, like, the passive damage increase that it gave Hand of Gul'dan was not massive, but it wasn't completely negligible. It was something. It made a bit of a difference when it came to like heavier heavier AoE. Even when it came to single target, you could see in a raw damage split the damage difference between playing one Demonic Meteor trait and one not. The shard generation, albeit, you know, a bit RNG, was relevant in single target. For more pets, for, you know, demonic consumption, for single target based abilities in AoE, more imps, more implosions, more shard gen. It was a good all around universal trait, and it does sort of feel like a decent, like, no, I wouldn't want to say capstone talent, but more of like a, I don't know, like a 1 out of 1 kind of talent you can put somewhere in like an early to middle row that would help the overall, I feel like, fluidity of the spec. Sort of how Borne of Blood is, wink, Borne of Blood is for Demonology in Shadowlands, right? Borne of Blood fills the gap. Borne of Blood is insane. Borne of Blood fills, I shouldn't get too far ahead of myself here, but Borne of Blood makes the spec feel much more fluent, helps with the overall fluidity of the spec. And I think Demonic Meteor sort of was like Borne of Blood in a sense, sort of, to a lesser extent in BFA. And having that around to supplement their overall rotation of Demo, I think would be a solid choice if you're looking for certain talents to fill in heading into Dragonflight. Number 5. Sort of is a bit similar to Demonic Meteor in a sense. Most of us should be familiar with it. It is Forces of the Horned Nightmare, the Shadowlands legendary that was initially during Alpha and Beta one that everybody thought was going to be your best legendary. But in the end, Decom was still very good, and Wilfred's, and unsurprisingly, ended up being the play for basically the entire expansion. Forces of the Horned Nightmare. Hand of Gul'dan has a 15% chance to cast a second time on your target for free. This feels like a legendary kind of effect to me. This, similar to like Grim Inquisitors, similar to, well, I guess Grim Inquisitors, so we haven't gotten too far in the actual video yet. It feels like a legendary ability to me. There's RNG tied to it, but it's good in single target, more single target, you know, more Hand of Gul'dan cast in single target, more imps, whether decons are on or not, it's more single target value. Good in AoE, more imps, more implosion value. It's just a good overall universal trait. And if Blizzard's looking for those kind of traits heading into Dragonflight, where it's not just like one is good in single target versus one being good in AoE, sort of how like Inferno is to Cataclysm, which is sort of like a weird kind of row for Destro in the first place, I think Forces would be a great place to look. The trait's not overly powerful. Like, it's solid at what it does, and RNG is RNG. At times you'll have, you know, proc after proc after proc, and at times you'll have none, right? It's sort of how it feels in game. If you get, you know, 2 procs in your opener as Demonology, you have a pretty strong Tyrant in your opener. You have 6 to 7 to 8 more imps depending on your 4-piece. If you don't, it's a bit unfortunate, which is sort of why I feel like there are other better legendary effects around right now, like Wilfred's, like Grim Inquisitor, like IP. But this would be, I think, a very good supplemental, maybe even like one of the minor capstone talents for Demo heading into a new expansion. You can't really feel the overall, like, I guess rotational, not even a rotational change. You can't really feel Horned Nightmare. It just procs, and it sort of happens. It's sort of like how Carnivorous Stalkers is, right? You can feel Carnivorous, you can see the damage increase, you can see the reproc, but you can't really control it. Forces is the same way, more or less. You can't really, you know, play the RNG part of it. If it procs, if it happens, great. It's free damage. It's good in single target. It's good in AoE, similar to Carnivorous Stalkers. And honestly, the effect's pretty cool. I sort of regret not being able to play it, or I guess regret. I wish I could have played it more over the course of Shadowlands. But, you know, hey, Decon and Wilfred's have basically overshadowed everything when it comes to rating for Decon 4 years, Wilfred's I don't know, 2 at this point. So, and I like CDR based effects. Decon is enjoyable, but after four years of one talent being good, I think it's time for a bit of a change. So Forces, I think, could be a good mid-tier capstone kind of talent for Demonology. This is what, number 5? No, this is number 4. Number 4. Improved Dreadstalkers. Now, this is a bit of a favorite of mine. It's the talent that we had in Legion when Demonology, you know, first became a thing from the old meta form. It's very simple. Called Dreadstalkers now also summons 2 wild imps. So this would be relevant for decon value if decon was a thing heading into Dragonflight, which I hope it's not, but it's good in single target. It can be good in AoE because you could implode these imps. The imps literally spawn on the back of the Dreadstalkers, and they leap into combat on the back of the Dreadstalkers. I mean, it is a passive like damage throughput increase, but it's just cool, man. It's a cool personal, like a personal favorite ability of mine that I loved in Legion. It was so cool. I think the imps were colored differently too. I think these were like more yellow versus the ones that spawn being more purple. It was just cool, man. It was a cool, fun, flavorful kind of ability, which I feel like, you know, we're sort of lacking almost in a sense in modern day WoW to a certain extent. And in the end, I mean, if there's a better trait on this row, you'll probably take it over this regardless, but improved Dreadstalkers was awesome. I would love to see it back from a personal, just thematic, if this makes sense, thematically, I think it was cool. I want it back. Give me improved Dreadstalkers, please. That's what I want at number 4. Okay, the big hitters. Number 3. Wilfred's Sigil of Superior Summoning. I'm pretty sure that everybody probably saw this one coming somewhere, some way, to a certain extent. Obviously, this is a universal legendary effect. We're talking Demonology here. Now, it doesn't have to be Wilfred's, right? They're not going to label a talent Wilfred's, but we just touched on CDR, which is CDR's cooldown reduction. I like cooldown reduction. I think it's a fun, engaging ability to have in game for a majority of specs. If you're rewarded for playing the spec well with a shorter cooldown on your main ability. Now we do have the Demonic Tyrant, just decon synergy, which has been was fun for the first little bit of time. It's been 4.5 years. Personally, I'm ready to move past decon. I liked Portal when it first came out, when it was played for a whole month and a half in Uldir. Then decon took over, and that's that. But regardless of whether people play decon or not, Wilfred's reducing the cooldown of your Tyrant still makes a difference, because Tyrant still extends all your demons, whether you have some kind of Tyrant Soul Supreme Commander, whatever kind of damage buff after the Tyrant expires around, Wilfred's gives you that more frequently. And just in general, having, whether it's your Dark Glare or your Tyrant or your Infernal, your main cooldown faster, having those shorter damage profiles goes a long way, whether it's in single target or AoE. For example, Demonology having a 1-minute damage profile over the course of Shadowlands has made a big difference. There's a lot of fights, Mythic Plus in general, where that 1-minute damage profile is very unique. I think Halandris is a good example, right? I guess getting fairies at certain points you needed as well, but Halandris, Anduin at certain points, many fights, even this tier, where having that 1-minute Tyrant damage profile is very relevant. A lot of classes don't have that. Now, whether it's a minute or a minute 10 or a minute and a half or whatever, even a minute and a half, having a reduced cooldown on your main ability is still very strong, as long as the class is built properly, which, I mean, currently it is, because Decon and Wilfred's is pretty wild, but I'm a big fan of CDR. I love the Wilfred's effect. I would love to see Wilfred's back in Shadow or in Dragonflight. Wilfred Sigil or some kind of cooldown reduction based effect is my number 3 pick heading into Dragonflight for Demonology. Alrighty, number 2. I've gone back and forth on number 2 and number 1 here. One, I think, is important to have around for the spec, which we've learned over the course of Shadowlands, and the other one, which is going to be number 1, is a favorite of mine. I think a favorite of THD's, and just a good ability that I wish was around. But we'll get to that in a minute. Number 2, Borne of Blood. I like Borne of Blood. It's good. I think it might even be too good in a sense. Okay, there's a lot going on with Borne of Blood. Hand of Golden has a 16% chance to generate a charge of Demonic Core. It's a lot higher in game now. I don't even know what it is. It's like 32 or something like that. It's wild. Basically, every Hand of Golden cast gives you like a 1 in 3. Yeah, it's 32. It's like a 1 in 3 chance to proc a charge of Demonic Core. Now, putting aside the 2-piece and getting, you know, three demonic core stacks every 20 seconds with your dog expiring and all that, that's something in itself. But early on in the expansion, Borne of Blood went in my opinion, a very long way in making the spec feel more fluid, more precise, more consistent, having that charge of demonic core laying around. Whether you couldn't really count on it coming in, right? You couldn't plan on casting a hand of Gul'dan and having that demonic core stack there 100% of the time. But it, number one, made the spec more mobile, being able to bank 2, 3, 4 Borne of Blood, or I guess demonic core procs, maybe even one being from Borne of Blood, made the spec more mobile, it made it more consistent, and it just made the spec feel better, right? It made it feel faster, even at lower levels of haste. It makes the spec feel faster, more fluid. You're casting slower, but you're having these procs coming in randomly. Even if it's a 16% chance, there's still chances of it happening. Having those 2 procs back to back makes the spec feel more fluent, just better, faster, more consistent. Borne of Blood is just great. Borne is just good. This sort of does feel like an ability or a trait that can make like 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4 rank wise, giving you a higher chance per hand cast, I guess, if that makes sense. Like maybe, I don't know, 4, 8, 16, 24, however they want to, I guess it'd be 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, but however you want to look at it, I think Borne of Blood is so good, it's almost mandatory, I feel like, to have as part of Demo's toolkit heading into Dragonflight. You could just make it a baseline ability, like the ones that give you a shorter Dark Lair for Affliction, or the ones that give you an extra Imp cast for Demonology whenever you level up. It feels like one of those abilities. Borne of Blood, like, doesn't get a lot of attention in Shadowlands. It's a passive conduit, but it is like one of the biggest ones for Demo. Like Thal'kiel, Carnivorous. Okay, Carnivorous is probably the biggest one people talk about. Carnivorous followed by Tyrant Soul. Thal'kiel sort of fell off a bit, but Borne of Blood gets a bad rap, man. Borne of Blood is, early on, I feel like the glue that held Demo together. It's less noticeable now because you have your 4-piece and multiple procs coming in, and that's all that. 3 procs per dog set. But having Borne around, I guess not having Borne around, Demonology, if it's in this same form, will feel a lot different, especially early on when you have these low levels of haste. Borne of Blood almost feels mandatory to me heading into Dragonflight. I hope it's there. If it's not, I hope I'm wrong. Number 1, and I will say chat, good list, YouTube. So we have 2 abilities, talents, whatever you want to call them, that are honorable mention, 1 to 2, depending how many I put in here, after this number 1 pick, which require a bit more explanation. We'll go into that too. So if you don't like the number 1 pick, just stick around for a minute and you can hopefully like the one after that. Number 1, a favorite of mine, a favorite of THG's, a favorite of the people. Thal'kiel's Consumption. Thal'kiel's Consumption. Thal'kiel, which could very well just be the player, drains 8% of the life from your demon servants and unleashes a blast of shadow damage at your current target equal to the life he stole. I believe this is, a 45-second cooldown. This could very, 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 very easily just be made into an ability that says you drain 8% of the life. Thal'kiel's Consumption is basically what demonic consumption sort of is, in a sense now. I feel like their idea, I could be wrong here, but I feel like their idea for demonic consumption was sort of based around Legion going away and losing the artifact trait and giving us demonic consumption to replace Thal'kiel's Consumption. And I mean, consumption sort of makes sense, but I feel like when I'm playing Demonology, maybe this is a bit of a flavor kind of take thing here, I sort of want to be like the thing that empowers my pets and the thing that does damage. And your pets still do a good portion of your damage, but I feel like Decon, while cool and enjoyable and all that stuff, it's good. I feel like Thal'kiel just thematically felt so much better, and it can essentially be the same thing as demonic consumption if it's just tuned right. You can buff it, you can nerf it, you can do whatever you want, but Thal'kiel felt like there was more player power tied to that, and it felt like you were this master summoner of like where I summoned all these pets out, and now I'm draining their health, and I'm doing the damage, not I have all these pets out, here's this big tyrant every minute, he sucks their life away and does all the damage, I'm here casting Shadow Bolts. Because let's be honest, all you do as a player as Demo right now is cast Shadow Bolts and Demon Bolts. What else do you do? And hand the Gul'dans. Like, all you do is build shards and cast spells that don't do much damage and summon your pets that do all the damage, which once again sort of fits the theme of Demonology and Summoner. But Thal'kiel's Consumption, or Warlock's Consumption, whatever you want to call it, I think would shift a lot of that feel back to being that master summoner in a sense, without really breaking the spec either. It's sort of been there before. They could very well do it again. And like I said, thematically, I love Thal'kiel's consumption. You'd have to rework it. The skull's not around anymore. Once again, you can just make it based off the Warlock. You drain 8% of the life or X life from your demons and blast the target. That's literally it. And hey, it's half the cooldown of Decon. Feels pretty good, right? So if you had this with a Tyrant being every minute and a half, actually, that'd be pretty wild. Think about it. Let's say, for example, there's no Wilfred in Dragonflight. Let's just say there isn't. Minute and a half Tyrant, every minute and a half. Head extensions, every other Thal'kiel's, gives you a big drain. Feels pretty good, man. I don't even make the game. I just designed a great ability right there. Feels pretty good. Number 1, Thal'kiel's consumption. I want to see it back in Dragonflight. That's what I want. All right, I was going to do 2 abilities for honorable mention. I was going to put a certain one in Tyrant Soul. Tyrant Soul is just good. Just bring it back. It's fine. I don't want to talk about it. The one I want to talk about, everybody knows what's going to be. Even if you haven't looked at the timestamp and the YouTube, duration, you probably know what it's going to be. I'm going to say right now, there is a low chance this happens. And as much as I would love to see it back, disclaimer, I don't necessarily think it's going to happen, or should it happen. But if I don't mention Metamorphosis, everyone's going to literally hate me and unsub from the channel. So, I will explain why I like meta, how it could come back, but why it probably won't come back. Okay, meta was great, awesome ability. This was the highlight of Demonology Warlock, in my opinion, in most everyone's opinion. Turn into a demon, transforming your corruption, hellfire, hand of Gul'dan, hellfire, and shadow into alternate improved abilities and improving functionality of many other abilities. Huge armor increase, demonic leap, immolation aura, just an insane chaos wave, touch of chaos. Yeah, an insane amount of abilities that would change. It just felt incredible. Meta demo felt great. There's even a picture over here too. Look, a warlock in meta form, in demon form. There you go. It's pretty sick, man. The highlight of my demonology career was playing meta demo. The skill ceiling was high. The class felt powerful. It felt insane. I would love the ability back, and I've talked about it on a stream 10,000 times. I think it'd be super cool. The thing is, Metamorphosis does not fit the current version of demonology. We can put aside the fact that Demon Hunters took Metamorphosis, they took Immolation Aura, they took Curse of Elements away from us. They literally gave that whole spec to Demon Hunters. I'm not even memeing it. Half the abilities are theirs now. But meta does not fit the current version of demonology. Blizzard could very well spin it that way, where it changes Hand of Gul'dan and it changes other abilities, like called Dreadstalkers into called Pit Lord. I don't know. They could change it, right? They could make it work, but it doesn't fit the current version of Demo. The current version of Demo is a summoner-based spec. It's built around imps and Dreadstalkers and tyrants, and I wish they'd add more demons to current demonology. Demo right now feels the same way it felt 6 years ago in Legion. I'm hoping we get more in Dragonflight, right? And we might cover that in a different series based on non-talents and non-abilities and stuff like that. Meta could be done. And let's be honest, Blizzard knows, I'm sure Blizzard's more than aware of the community wanting meta back. But it's not a should we do it, it's a can we do it? Because I would assume chances are pretty high. It would probably require another demo overhaul. Back to an older version of demonology that they did away with for whatever reason. They could shoehorn it into current demo, I'm sure, some way, shape, or form. It probably wouldn't even be the same way it is here, though. It probably wouldn't be a huge damage-based ability for just the class. It'd probably be some way to empower your cast or empower your demons. I'd love meta back. Everybody wants meta back. That's not the question. That's not the debate we're having here. The debate we're having is like, is it actually relevant for this current version of demonology? And as much as I'd love to see it back, it's just not that. It's like trying to put car tires on a bike. They just don't fit. They're two different things, right? It just doesn't work anymore. You can do it technically, but it doesn't work. Could Blizzard do it? Yeah, they very well could. But is it going to happen? I think chances are pretty low. I'd love it to happen. And if Blizz, you're watching this, try and find, I would love you to find some way to shoehorn Metamorphosis into Demo. But the chances of it happening are exceptionally low. It's just an old version of Demo that doesn't really fit current Demo anymore. But like I said earlier, hey, it has been 2 expansions, so Demo could be up for an overhaul again. Memes aside, I had to throw it into the video. If I didn't, everybody would hate me. They probably hate me anyways from saying that it's not going to come back, but let's be honest, guys. If you really think about it, it's probably not happening. But Blizzard did ask for feedback on abilities people went back. They asked for the feedback. They might not like it, but they got it. Honorable mention. Maybe reminiscing on old times. Maybe it's nostalgia. It's not going to happen. But hey, Blizz, if it happens, meta. I'm going to be honest, man. I just finished filming the Metamorphosis segment, and I feel bad. But this is the outro. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm sorry, dudes. I would really love meta back. It's just as much as everybody else. It was the best time to play Demo. The spec was fun. It was engaging. But I just don't think it's going to happen. But hey, they asked for the feedback. So there it is. Regardless, though, thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think of these suggested abilities down in the comment section below. I ended up trimming a few of them. I ended up trimming Wakener's Loyalty, the Expendables. I trimmed Hand of Doom, because Doom's not based on ability anymore. There was a few more that I didn't add to this video because I don't think they're as relevant. But if I missed some, or you guys think there's some that are relevant or more relevant than these, add them down or drop them down in the comment section below. And I'm interested. I might make a list of like an actual list, a feedback doc of these abilities. So drop them below. Any questions, put them down there as well. I will be sure to get back to you. And while you're down there, hit the like and sub buttons. Helps out a ton. Now, the destruction version of this video should be coming out hopefully within a few days. I've got a long list of abilities for that I'm reading on my other monitor here. And I think Destro is going to be the spiciest video. I'm excited for it. And I don't even like Destro as much as Demo or Af. So if you guys want to see that, yeah, be sure to swing by in a few days. With that all being said, thanks for watching, guys, and I will catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.